when my asthmatic mother struggled to breathe at the neighborhood barbecue. Our power-hungry HOA president, Eleanor Hoffman, took her inhaler as punishment for violating petty rules. How was she supposed to know that my sweet, struggling mother was actually an undercover FBI agent investigating their corrupt organization? Red and blue lights flashed through our curtains as I watched the ambulance pull away with Mom inside, all because Eleanor couldn't mind her own business about our garden gnome. I stood in our driveway, shaking with a mix of anger and fear. Just 10 hours earlier, everything was normal. I can pinpoint the exact moment Eleanor first targeted us. We had just finished unpacking boxes in our new home in Pinecrest Gardens when a sharp knock interrupted our pizza dinner. There she stood, in her pristine white pantsuit, a black notebook in hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said without a smile. "Your mailbox is non-regulation, 2 shades darker than permitted. Fix it by Friday." Mom politely invited her in for pizza, but Eleanor gave the box a look as if it were a deadly weapon. "I prefer to keep our interactions professional," she said. "I'm the HOA president. You'll find all the rules in the welcome packet. There are many." That was 3 months ago. Since then, she'd written us up for trash cans visible from the street, Christmas lights left up too long, even though it was January 2nd, a bird feeder that attracted pests, and Mom's rose bushes being half an inch too tall. She even accused my car of leaking oil on the driveway when it wasn't. Mom, who taught kindergarten for 30 years before retiring last spring, tried to make peace. She baked cookies for Eleanor, invited her to tea, and even offered to help with community projects. But Eleanor responded by increasing her inspections of our property. What really bothered her was Raymond, the garden gnome Dad gave Mom for their last anniversary before his heart attack. Raymond sat happily by our front steps, fishing pole in hand. "It cheapens the aesthetic of Pinecrest Gardens," Eleanor declared during her 4th visit in 2 weeks. "The rules allow for tasteful lawn ornaments," Mom replied, showing Eleanor the page in the HOA handbook. "Raymond stays." I noticed Mom's hand trembling as she spoke. The stress was taking its toll on her asthma. At 62, what had once been a mild condition was now worsening. Ever since Dad died, it had gotten worse. Yesterday marked the annual Pinecrest Gardens summer barbecue, and Eleanor had called a special meeting to discuss community standards. When we arrived at the clubhouse, I immediately felt uneasy. Too many people glanced at us, then quickly looked away. "Glad you could join us," Eleanor said into the microphone as we found our seats. "I was just discussing property values and how certain residents seemed determined to lower them." She clicked to a PowerPoint slide showing our house with Raymond circled in angry red. "This is exactly the kind of tackiness that drives away quality buyers," she announced. Mom stood up. "Eleanor, this isn't appropriate for a community event. The bylaws clearly state." "The bylaws state I maintain community standards," Eleanor interrupted. "And your attitude has been noted repeatedly." A few neighbors looked uncomfortable. Some nodded in agreement with Mom. "The gnome is a gift from my late husband," Mom explained, her voice catching. I could hear the wheezing in her chest, the first sign of an asthma attack. "Your personal attachments aren't our concern," Eleanor snapped. "Remove it or face fines." Mom's breathing grew labored. She reached into her purse for her inhaler, trying to speak, but Eleanor marched over and snatched it from her hand. "This behavior is exactly the problem," she said. Shocked gasps came from around the room. Mom tried to grab it back, but Eleanor stepped away. "When you learn some manners," Eleanor said coldly. Mom's face drained of color as she struggled for air. I jumped up, shouting for Eleanor to give it back. 2 of Eleanor's friends, board members who always sided with her, stood in my way. "She needs that to breathe," I yelled. "She needs to respect authority," Eleanor replied, casually dropping Mom's inhaler into her designer handbag. Meeting adjourned. As people began filing out, some looking concerned, others deliberately looking away, Mom collapsed. I shoved past Eleanor's friends and caught her before she hit the floor. Someone called 911. I screamed as Mom's lips began turning blue. "Your mother suffered a severe asthma attack," Dr. Patel explained as we sat in the hospital consultation room. "If you hadn't gotten her here so quickly," he trailed off, his expression grim. I couldn't finish that thought. The image of Mom gasping for air while Eleanor walked away with her inhaler kept replaying in my mind. "Can I see her?" I asked. Dr. Patel nodded. "She's stabilized, but we're keeping her overnight." I asked for her phone. When I walked into her room, I found Mom surprisingly alert, hooked up to monitors and oxygen. Her first words weren't what I expected. "Did you bring my secure phone?" "The one in the locked drawer of my nightstand." "Mom, you need to rest. I'm going to call the police about Eleanor." "No police," Mom said firmly. "Not yet. Get my phone first." I drove home, dazed, the rain pounding against the windshield, matching the thundering beat of my heart. A certified letter from the HOA was taped to our door, soaked in the rain, which was, of course, against their own rules for proper mail delivery. Inside, the letter demanded a $500 fine for disruptive conduct at a community event and threatened legal action if not paid within 7 days. It was signed by Eleanor and stamped with the HOA seal. "Unbelievable," I muttered, tossing it on the counter. In Mom's room, I found the key exactly where she'd said, taped inside her copy of Pride and Prejudice. The drawer contained a phone I'd never seen before, along with a small notebook filled with what looked like financial records and codes. When I returned to the hospital, Mom was sitting up, looking better but serious. "Lock the door," she said. I did, confused. "Mom, what's going on?" "We need to report Eleanor for." "Sit down, honey." Mom's voice had changed. It was calmer, more authoritative than I'd ever heard. "There's something I need to tell you." She took the phone, entered a long passcode, and made a call. "Agent Catherine Reynolds reporting, authorization code L9N-D47. I need to speak with Director Swanson." "Yes, it's urgent." I stared at my mother, my kindergarten teacher, speaking in a way I'd never heard before. "Sir, my cover may be compromised. The subject has escalated to physical endangerment." "Yes." She took my inhaler, which contains the tracking device. "No, my identity is still secure, but we need to accelerate the timeline." When she hung up, Mom saw my shocked expression. Inside, "I'm not just a retired kindergarten teacher," she said quietly. "I've been with the FBI for 35 years, Financial Crimes Division." I laughed nervously. "Very funny, Mom. You taught Mrs. Peterson's kids and half the town." "I did teach, yes. That was my cover for the last decade," she said, reaching into her hospital gown. She pulled out a chain with a badge I'd never seen before. "But this is who I really am." That's real." I touched the metal badge, feeling suddenly dizzy. "Eleanor Hoffman has been running a massive money laundering operation through the HOA for years," Mom explained in a low voice. "I've been tracking transactions across 5 different homeowners associations. That's why we moved here after your father passed." "Dad knew," I whispered. "Your father was my handler until he retired 5 years ago. We weren't supposed to fall in love, but we did. He stayed active as my support until his heart attack." I felt the room spin. Everything I thought I knew about my mother. Family had just been turned upside down. The asthma attack had been real, but the inhaler Eleanor took contained a specialized recording device that had been documenting her meetings and phone calls. "Whenever I'm near her, she's just made a critical mistake by taking federal property," Mom said. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Mom quickly hid her badge and nodded for me to answer. 2 people in business attire stood outside, a tall black woman and a younger man with glasses. "Agents Clark and Rodriguez," the woman said quietly, showing me her badge. "We need to speak with Agent Reynolds." They entered, closing the door behind them. "Catherine, we've been monitoring the situation," Agent Clark said. "Director Swanson has authorized immediate action based on the medical threat. Eleanor scheduled an emergency HOA board meeting for tomorrow morning to discuss our ongoing violations," I said. She sent a notice before taking Mom's inhaler. The agents exchanged glances. "Perfect timing," Mom said. "The quarterly HOA fees were collected last week. If her pattern holds, the money will move tomorrow after the meeting. We'll have a full team in place," Agent Rodriguez confirmed. "Your hospitalization actually helps our case. It adds assault to the financial crimes charges." "What do you need me to do?" I asked, still struggling to reconcile my kindergarten teacher mom with this calm federal agent discussing operations. Mom reached for my hand. "Go home, act normal, attend the meeting tomorrow, and record everything. We'll have agents nearby, but we need you to be our eyes and ears." "Won't Eleanor be suspicious when you're not there?" Mom smiled grimly. "Oh, I'll be there. Dr. Patel is actually Agent Patel. I'll be discharged in the morning." I drove home in a state of shock, nearly missing the 3 black SUVs parked discreetly along different streets in our neighborhood. At home, the garden gnome, Raymond, seemed to wink at me in the porch light. I wondered if he too had been part of this elaborate cover story. Sitting on our couch, I pulled out photo albums, seeing my parents' life with new eyes, Dad's government accounting job, Mom's teaching position that always seemed to move districts every few years, the professional conferences they attended separately. Then I noticed something in a family beach photo, Dad's watch, the same unusual model I'd seen on Agent Rodriguez's wrist. Had I been surrounded by FBI agents my entire life without knowing? Just after midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Operation active at 0900. Be ready. I stared out the window at our quiet suburban street, wondering what would happen when Eleanor Hoffman discovered she hadn't just stolen an inhaler from a sick older woman. She'd stolen federal property from an FBI agent who'd been building a case against her for months. Blood pounded in my ears as Mom gripped my arm outside the community center. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "I need you to act surprised when I reveal who I am. This operation is bigger than Eleanor's petty power trip." Inside, every seat was filled. Neighbors whispered and pointed as we entered. Eleanor sat at the center table, flanked by her loyal board members, Stuart and Diana. My mother's inhaler sat in front of her like a prize. Late as usual, Eleanor smirked, checking her diamond-studded watch. "We've called this emergency meeting to address the Reynolds' ongoing violations and disruptive behavior." Mom shuffled forward, shoulders hunched, playing the frail asthmatic perfectly. I bit my lip, amazed at her acting skills. For 8 months, I'd watched her struggle with stairs and carry an oxygen tank for especially bad days, all fake. "Before we begin," Eleanor continued, tapping a stack of papers, "I want everyone to see the documentation of the Reynolds' 17 violations this year alone." She projected photos onto the wall. Our mailbox, Mom's rose bushes, even our Halloween decorations from last year. Eleanor gestured dramatically. "As you can see, these people have no respect for our community standards. And yesterday, Miss Reynolds had the audacity to have a medical episode during my speech, simply to draw attention away from her violations." Gasps filled the room. Even Eleanor's supporters looked uncomfortable. "You stole my medication," Mom wheezed. "I could have died. I confiscated a disruptive prop," Eleanor corrected, holding up the inhaler. "If you were truly sick, you'd have gone to a hospital, not tried to embarrass me publicly." Mom's hand trembled as she reached into her purse. I steeled myself, knowing what was coming. "I did go to the hospital," Mom said, her voice suddenly strong. She pulled out her badge, holding it high. "And now, I'm placing you under investigation, Eleanor Hoffman." The room exploded in confusion. 2 agents entered from the back door, wearing dark suits and serious expressions. "This is Agent Catherine Reynolds," announced the taller agent. "She's been leading our investigation into financial irregularities in HOA operations across 3 counties. Eleanor's face contorted with disbelief. "This is absurd. She's lying." Mom straightened to her full height, all traces of weakness gone. "That inhaler you so proudly displayed contains a recording device that has captured every conversation we've had, including your admission yesterday about using HOA funds for your vacation home in Aspen. You can't record me without my knowledge. That's illegal," Eleanor shrieked. "Not when it's part of a federal investigation into money laundering," Mom replied calmly. "We have bank records showing over $200,000 in resident fees diverted to personal accounts. We have evidence of falsified financial reports. And now, thanks to your theatrical display of power today, we have you on record admitting to deliberately endangering a federal agent by withholding necessary medical equipment." Eleanor lunged for the inhaler, but one of the agents was faster. "This is federal property, ma'am." Stuart and Diana began edging away from Eleanor, but Mom shook her head. "Don't bother. Your signatures are on the fraudulent documents too." My neighbor Tasha stood up, trembling. "They fined me $2,000 when my husband was deployed overseas because our grass grew too long while I was at my mother's funeral." This opened the floodgates. Neighbors began calling out injustices, excessive fines, arbitrary rules, selective enforcement. "Quiet," Eleanor screamed, slamming her fist on the table. "This community would fall apart without my leadership. These people are trying to destroy everything we've built." Mom calmly opened a laptop, projecting financial records onto the wall. "Residents of Pine Crest Gardens, These are your HOA financial statements for the past 3 years. The highlighted entries show money transferred to shell companies owned by Mrs. Hoffman and her associates. Eleanor knocked over her chair as she stood. You'll regret this. My husband plays golf with Senator Wilson. Senator Wilson is well aware of our investigation, Mom replied. In fact, his office has received numerous complaints about predatory HOA practices. As agents led Eleanor, Stuart, and Diana outside, neighbors surrounded us with questions and thanks. Mom held up her hand for quiet. There's something else you should know, she said gravely. Pinecrest Gardens was just one target. We've uncovered similar schemes in 12 communities across the state. Eleanor's group has been using these residential associations as fronts to move money from less legitimate ventures. Tomorrow's newspaper will have the full story. While the room buzzed with shock, I finally found my voice. Why didn't you tell me? I asked as we walked home in the street. Their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. Flashlights cut through the darkening sky as officers continued to swarm the community center, securing evidence. Mom's grip tightened on my hand as she kept her eyes trained on the scene, her mind racing through the implications. We need to go back, she said urgently, her voice sharp as she turned toward me. What's happened? I whispered, anxiety rising. They found something in the basement, she replied, her tone grim. As we hurried back, the yellow crime scene tape now blocked the entrance. Mom flashed her badge at the officer's standing guard, and with a respectful nod, he lifted the tape, allowing us entry. What did they find? I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper, as we descended narrow, hidden stairs I never knew existed. Documents, she replied. Truly lots of them. The basement smelled musty, filled with the scent of unused space. Metal shelves lined the concrete walls, cluttered with dusty holiday decorations and broken pool furniture. But the agents were focused on a section of the wall that had been moved aside, revealing a hidden room. Catherine, good timing. A man in a rumpled suit waved us over. Your hunch was right. This goes beyond local corruption. Inside the hidden space, stacks of files reached the ceiling. A computer hummed in one corner, next to what looked like professional printing equipment. Identity theft? Mom asked, pulling on latex gloves as she approached. Much more, the man replied, handing her a folder. We found evidence linking Eleanor's group to at least 3 criminal organizations operating across state lines. They've been using HOA fees to launder money, but they've also been creating fake identities using residents' information. My stomach dropped. You mean they've been stealing our identities? Our neighbors' identities. Not just stealing them. Another agent called out from behind a computer screen. They've been selling packages, new names, credit histories, backgrounds. High-quality stuff that could fool most security checks. Mom opened the folder and gasped. Inside were perfect replicas of passports, driver's licenses, and social security cards, all with photos of people I recognized from our neighborhood, but with different names. They've been using our community as a testing ground, Mom explained quietly, creating fake identities based on real people, then selling them to criminals. That's why Eleanor was so obsessed with taking pictures at every community event. I realized she wasn't documenting violations. She was gathering photos for fake IDs. I blinked in confusion. Wait, you knew about my Gnome camera? Mom winked at me. Who do you think suggested the brand? I needed extra surveillance, but couldn't install official equipment without blowing my cover. As I processed this, another agent shouted from across the room. We've got digital files. Looks like transactions going back 3 years. Mom's expression darkened as she approached the computer screen. This is bigger than we thought. These payments trace back to shell companies in 7 countries. Is that why the FBI got involved? I asked. This seems way beyond normal HOA issues. Mom nodded. We received tips about unusual financial patterns in several communities. Small HOAs suddenly purchasing expensive security systems. Landscaping companies being paid triple market rates. Classic signs of money laundering. But we never expected to find an identity theft operation. More vehicles arrived, and residents began gathering on the street, watching from a distance as the agents worked. The weight of the situation was settling in, and I could feel the shift in the air. Our quiet neighborhood wasn't what it seemed, and neither were the people we thought we knew. It wasn't just Eleanor anymore. This web of crime went far deeper than anyone had realized. The street was filled with shock as agents carried out box after box of evidence. Residents stood frozen, unable to process the unfolding scene. Tasha appeared at my side, her voice trembling. "Is it true? Eleanor was stealing our information." Before I could respond, a commotion erupted near a police car. Eleanor, somehow managing to slip out of her handcuffs, tried to make a run for it. 2 officers quickly caught up with her, but not before she locked eyes with me, her face twisted in rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her voice laced with venom. "They'll come for all of you when they discover their operation is compromised." Mom stepped forward, her voice steady. "Who will come, Eleanor? Give us names, and we can protect you." Eleanor's laugh was cold and filled with contempt. "You think I'm the mastermind? I'm just the local manager. There are 50 communities like this one." As they secured Eleanor in the back of a police car, Mom pulled me aside, her tone shifting to urgency. "We need to talk about your safety. This case has expanded significantly." Back home, Mom made call after call while I tried to process everything. Our quiet neighborhood, the one we'd thought was so normal, had been a front for an international crime syndicate. My mother, a skilled federal agent, was now a target. Somewhere out there, people were furious that their operation had been exposed. "Pack a bag," Mom instructed, hanging up the phone. "Just essentials. We're leaving." "But what about our house?" I asked, fear bubbling in my chest. "Our neighbors are being assigned protection teams," she explained, already filling her suitcase. "But you and I need to go to a secure location. Eleanor's bosses will figure out quickly that I'm the agent who infiltrated their operation." I grabbed a few things, including photo albums and my laptop. "Where are we going?" "Witness protection," she replied, handing me a new phone. "This one's secure. Your old one stays here." A knock at the door made us freeze. Mom instinctively reached for a gun I didn't know she had, approaching cautiously. After a moment, she relaxed slightly. "It's Agent Michaels," she said, opening the door. The tall agent from earlier stepped inside, urgency in his steps. "We need to move, now?" "We intercepted communications. They know who you are, Catherine." Within minutes, we were in an unmarked car, driving away from the only home I'd known for the past year. As the streetlights flickered by, Mom squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry I had to lie to you," she said softly. "This assignment was supposed to be simple. Gather evidence, build a case against local corruption. Will we ever come back?" I asked, watching our house disappear around a corner. "Yes," she promised. "But first, we need to help dismantle this entire network." 6 months later, we stood in our driveway again. The house looked exactly as we'd left it, though the garden had grown wild. New security cameras now watched the street, less discreetly hidden than my garden gnome had been. The trial had made national headlines. FBI uncovers massive criminal network operating through homeowners associations. Eleanor and her associates received lengthy sentences, and though her mysterious bosses were still being hunted, their operation had been crippled. Our neighbors welcomed us back with a block party. The newly elected HOA board, now led by Tasha, had one simple rule: be kind. "What will you do now?" Tasha asked, as we enjoyed hamburgers in the same park where everything had started. "Actually retire," Mom said with a laugh, patting her real inhaler. "My asthma, not pretend, and chasing criminals is a young agent's game." I smiled, watching her chat with neighbors who now looked at her with respect, not pity. My mother had taught me the most important lesson: never judge someone by appearances. As for the garden gnome with its hidden camera, we gave it a place of honor by our front door, a reminder that sometimes the smallest things provide the greatest protection.